I hope everybody enjoyed the Lawmaker Appreciation reception last night, hosted by Navajo Transitional Energy. We really appreciate you guys spending the time with us yesterday afternoon and evening and the opportunity to get together. We'd like to take a minute and recognize our silver sponsors: Atlantic Richfield Company, Bloom Montana, Crowley Fleck, DoorDash, Eide Bailey, Montana's Credit Unions, Pharmaceutical Care Management Association, and the University of Washington WWAMI program. We truly do appreciate the sponsorship and the commitment to the Chamber. Business Days at the Capitol is Montana Chamber's signature event that focuses on policy, convening business leaders throughout Montana and beyond, and an event wouldn't be complete if we weren't hearing from the policymakers as well. We are very fortunate to have the opportunity this morning to bring in the legislative leadership to talk about what's been going on in the interim. Today we have the opportunity to have Senate President Matt Regier, Senate Minority Whip Pat Flowers, Speaker of the House Brandon Lair, and unfortunately Mary has been unable to join us this morning. So would you please join us in welcoming to our stage the leadership.
Good morning, everybody. Hey, hope you had a great evening. Hope you had a great day yesterday. Here we are for the annual Eggs and Issues breakfast. I think I've done this since about 1993, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be back here. As Tony mentioned, I'm Kerry Hegerberg. I'm something of a chamber groupie, you might say kind of a Klingon, and I'm very pleased to have been honored to ask to moderate this panel this morning. You know, there was a lot of comments made yesterday comparing North Dakota with Montana, and I happen to have grown up in North Dakota, and two states actually claim my nativity. Montana claims I'm from North Dakota, and North Dakota claims I'm from Montana. But I've been here now for a long enough time, I think I can consider myself a native. So we're going to get started with this panel discussion. As was mentioned, Mary Cafaro let us know early this morning that she had fallen ill, so we wish her well in her recovery. And it's going to fall on Senator Flowers to do double duty today, it looks like. So we know you're up to it, Senator. So last spring, the Chamber wrapped up its fifth legislative session under the guidance of the 10-year strategic plan. I was around when that Envision 2026 plan was developed and unfolded, and it seemed like such an amazing long time in the future that we would reach 2026. And now here we are. The Chamber is embarking on another strategic plan, and you'll be hearing a lot more about that. But through legislative efforts, the Chamber has been focused on making measurable gains in several areas. You've heard a lot about it. If you read your pamphlet, you'll see some of those structured goals, but they focus on workforce development, business climate improvements, infrastructure investment, and entrepreneurship. The Chamber looks forward to embarking with future legislatures and future sessions in furthering and advancing those goals. So with that, I welcome you to the annual Eggs and Issues breakfast. It's great to see so many get up early in the morning to have breakfast and visit with our legislative leaders. And we really appreciate the legislators who are here and those who are serving for taking the time out of their busy lives and for coming to Helena and participating with us this morning. So let's get started right away. The bios are in your pamphlets, and so we'll dispense with lengthy introductions, and we'll just kick right into it with Senator Regier, President of the Montana Senate. Senator Regier, kick us off.
Good morning and Happy New Year to everybody. I have already lost all my New Year's resolutions. Can anybody relate to that? Eggs and Issues, thanks a bunch for having me here. It's always a great conversation, even though it is this early in the morning. Hopefully one of these days we can change it to ribeyes and reason or something in the evening. I don't know. I'll keep pushing for it. But with that, we'll keep the streak alive with good conversation. I'll start from the Senate perspective. The overarching theme probably for me was opportunities lost, disappointment. It turned out that this session was probably more about personalities than it was policy. Senator Glimm had said multiple times on the floor, the cake is baked, and it truly was. And I don't know how that's sustainable moving forward, how we legislate that way when it's more about personalities versus the words that are on the page. I don't know how you guys lobby that way when it's all about personalities and not so much about the ideas. I believe we should go there. When I was in the House, I said this multiple times. I said it to my caucus before I came into this last session that you made campaign promises. You got to hold those, vote that way. I made campaign promises. Let's go in, let's argue those issues. Let's take the vote. Then let's go have a beer and then come back and do it again. And maybe next time you're on my side. I think that's how it should be about the ideas and not the personalities. So working towards that, I really have optimism for next session that it's going to be a lot better that way. Despite all the drama that was there this last session, we introduced 1,759 bills. Out of those bills, we had 878 of those bills that passed both chambers. That ranks it 5th in Montana history for bills passed. So if you are one of those that say, well, those guys don't do anything up there, you can point to those numbers and say, we did do something. You can argue whether that was good or bad, but you can't argue that we weren't working. A few things for the business community passed the Senate was Senate Bill 143, Hertz, reducing statutory limitations from 10 to 6 years. Senate Bill 19, Senator Usher had one to rewind. If you remember back in 17, we had justice reinvestment. And that turned out when you're light on crime, actually crime proliferates, it turns out. So Senator Usher had those that help out bad checks, deceptive practices, forgery, ID theft, and regular theft. That was a great one. Digital assets. I think digital is in the future. We had a couple bills on that. I think is going to really help out, especially if digital moving into the business. Speaker here had income tax relief. I'm sure he'll talk about it. Senator Zolikoff has Senate Bill 117, which I think got lost in the property tax conversation. I think that is a bill that's going to help out in the future ongoing, especially newly taxable property that comes in. We can get into that later if you like. We had a few bills that we stopped that I think would help out the business community. There's a few ideas to jump into your payroll, your HR, and kind of tell you how to negotiate with your employees. House Bill 297 requiring the sick days. Once again, government telling you how to run your team. Don't agree with that. House Bill 484, mandatory level of wages. I believe it's meritocracy. We're still in America that your pay is what you're worth. Senate Bill 313, wage transparency. You'd have to justify to the Department of Labor why you're paying your employee what you're paying them. Not a good thing. Senate Bill 225, be a new payroll tax on you guys to give time off. So one bill, those are the bills that we did stop. One bill that we had that I believe was great, the more we looked into it for business community that didn't make it across the finish line. Senator McGilvery had a bill for an appellate court, ancillary court, and constitutional stuff, but as well as business stuff, business lawsuits. So right now, dependent neglect comes in, and you've been waiting years to get your business litigation done. They jump over the top, and rightfully so. It's dependent neglect, but that doesn't help out the business community. I know other states have that court. I think that could be a great thing for the business community of Montana. That's something we should look at in the future. So that's a quick overview of my take, anyways, from this session from the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now we're going to go and hear from the minority leader in the Senate. And Pat, I looked around the room moments ago and realized that I've known you longer than anybody in this room. We started working together in 1992 in various capacities. So it's an honor and pleasure to have you here in this capacity this morning. If you'd give us a little overview of your perspectives, we'd appreciate it.
Thanks, Carrie, and I appreciate you being here with you as the host, and want to thank the Chamber for once again inviting us to be here and talk about legislation and all the issues that I'm sure you're concerned about and share our legislative perspective. Thanks to Todd and Charles for inviting us, and with that, I'll pretty much just agree with everything that Matt said, except a few things. It was, to say the least, a challenging session. And from my perspective, from our perspective as a Democratic caucus, a very successful session. When I spoke with you last January, I focused on a lot of what I called kitchen table issues, and I thought that's the kind of the meat of what Montanans are looking at. It's cost of living issues. A lot of folks are struggling to figure out how to make the ends meet, and so that's where we tried to keep our focus throughout the session. And number one on that list for a lot of folks, okay, it went out for a second. I understand a lot of you were talking about this prior, and that's property tax, so I'll start with that. We went into this session with a number one goal of having long-term property tax relief for residential taxpayers, and we accomplished that. It was a bill that was probably, I wish it would have been heard earlier in the session. We were a little jammed up at the last couple weeks of the session, working on that really to the bitter end. And it wasn't precisely what Democrats wanted. Not surprisingly, it was a compromise in the end. And we felt like we got some components of that property tax bill that satisfied our interests, and certainly the governor and a lot of Republicans got what they wanted. It was basically, and we'll talk about this more, it sounds like later in the agenda, but it was essentially, in my mind, a little bit of a rebalancing from what happened in 22-23 in an attempt to give residential taxpayers a little fairer shake there. So that was kind of number one on the list. Beyond that, I want to touch on affordable housing, which is another one of those kitchen table issues I talked about last January, and certainly an issue from my hometown in Bozeman. And the way ultimately that was addressed, in large part, was as a component of what became known as the Growth and Opportunity Trust, and that's a legacy account that we passed as a body, ultimately signed by the governor, that provides a little assurance and some resiliency to this state looking forward as we deal with the ups and downs of the economy. One component of that was a focus on housing affordability, and one of the things that government has been able to do that seems to be effective in that front is provide low interest loans for developers, and that was a piece of that, and that trust provides for an ongoing source of income into that account to support those low interest loans for affordable housing. Another component of that was, which was one of those kitchen table issues that we also talked about a year ago, and that was related to child care. Child care is not only an issue for families, but it's also a business issue. As you know, if you run a business, one of the challenges is for your employees to find affordable child care. And so we were kind of laser focused on that. Our original intent, kind of our key piece of legislation going in, was focused on what we call a child care trust, which was, again, an ongoing source of funds to address child care resources and find creative ways to ensure that we have available and affordable child care. Ultimately, that child care trust was also rolled into the Growth and Opportunity trust in the end. So we felt really good about that. Another piece of that trust is focused on infrastructure. One of the challenges that particularly smaller communities, but I would say all communities in the state as well, face is how do they deal with large infrastructure investments. It's very difficult for a place like West Yellowstone or Big Sky, who I have represented for years, to fix a wastewater treatment facility all on their own. It's a huge investment. And so one of the tools that we built into the Growth and Opportunity Trust was a fund available to address those infrastructure needs, including things like dams, which we've got a lot in this state, which are slowly getting past their prime and are going to require a big investment. So that's another important component of that trust. Beyond that, moving beyond those key pieces, I would also want to speak about healthcare. Going into this session, we knew one of the big issues was going to be reauthorizing expanded Medicaid. And fortunately, we were able to, relatively early in the session, it was in February, mid-February, I believe, we actually passed that all the way through the legislature. And as you know, the governor, of course, signed that. And why is that important? That's important because 75,000 Montanans have relied on that for their health care, their health insurance. And many of your employees, if you're unable to provide health care or health insurance as part of your benefit package, rely on expanded Medicaid. So it's, in our mind, really important to the business community that passed, and I understand the Chamber supported that effort as well. It's also a huge issue for eastern Montana, or just generally rural Montana, to ensure that we have stability in our rural healthcare system. If you talk to any executive who's running a clinic or a hospital in rural Montana, and they'll tell you how important that is to keeping the doors open. And so all of us who live in more rural Montana want to have available health care at a reasonable distance. And so we believe we've provided for that by passing expanded Medicaid. Another kind of bedrock issue for Democrats is public education. We believe that's kind of the framework that a lot of our kids rely on, is a strong public education, and those kids become your employees eventually. And so we've always strongly backed a solid public education system. What we were able to do in this last session, among other things, was provide for funding for infrastructure, buildings that are slowly falling apart across the state, and we freed up some dollars so schools will be able to maintain those buildings and deal with deferred maintenance there. In addition, we addressed starting teacher pay, which has been a challenge, and we think there's more work to be done there, but we thought it was a good step forward on that front. I think the President mentioned some of the work that was done related to the judiciary. From our perspectives, one of the alarming things that we were concerned about in this last session related to the judiciary was the proposal to provide what I would call partisan courts. So we would have partisan elections for our judiciary. And in our mind, what we want out of our judiciary is a non-biased, objective, nonpartisan judgment whenever we walk in that courtroom. We shouldn't have to worry about whether the judge is a Democrat or a Republican. We should be worried about whether they're going to apply the right jurisprudence in our case. That applies to all of you as well, and we believe by keeping our courts nonpartisan, which we were able to achieve in this last session, we provide you assurance that if you've got issues that come before judge and jury, that you're going to be treated fairly just like we are as individuals. So that was an important win for us. Lastly, Native issues are really important to our caucus. We have a lot of Native members, and we were able to pass the Montana Indian Welfare or Child Welfare Act, or reauthorize it, and that was really important to our Native communities and to all their children. There's probably a lot more to say, but I'll move on, or let us move on. We can touch later on some of those topics. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Flowers. You mentioned rural communities, and with us today is Speaker Brandon Lair, who's from a rural community, Savage, Montana. For those of you that don't know, it's between Glendive and Sydney. I just went through there the other day on my way through and saw a lot of center pivots toppled over and trees. Mr. Speaker, did you incur much damage?
Thank you. No, we did not. That was the wind event that I see that the whole state got from one end to the other. I think it was from the western seaboard all the way to pretty much North Dakota, Minnesota. So we didn't personally incur damage, but I know that across the state, whether it was Northwestern, MDU, or a lot of other infrastructure was damaged, and a lot of farm equipment, trees, but we'll put everything back together and be ready to go for spring. So
Great. Well, let us know your perspectives on what happened in the last session and kind of what you're looking forward to in 2027, a year from now.
thank you. And again, just like these last couple guys said, I want to thank the chamber. I'm from the opposite end of the perspective as Matt. This is kind of late. We're about an hour and a half late getting started to the day. With that, I really appreciate the conversation we're able to have up here. And again, I'll agree with the Senate President. I believe this session was one for the books. There was a lot of drama, but I do think that we passed a lot of good legislation that got lost in a lot of that drama. With that, I think one of the biggest pieces of legislation we passed for people in this room, especially in the natural resource world and development world, is MEPA reform. We passed 3 key bills that I believe that will set the stage for Montana moving forward, especially in the natural resource and with oncoming development, whether that's coal mines or wanting to build any sort of infrastructure, whether that's downtown Bozeman or in the middle of nowhere Savage, that is just going to create a platform that is known. And I didn't know about it till Christmas Day, but on Christmas Eve, the Supreme Court upheld what we did, I guess, and with denying the hearing from when the held case was wanting to go through and relitigate that. So I woke up that morning to a notice on my phone, and I think my whole family was kind of shocked when I said, "It's a Christmas miracle," because that is probably one of the first Supreme Court decisions I can really get behind. I think, we'll discuss property tax here in a few minutes, I imagine, and income tax. We passed the largest income tax cut in state history. Roughly $280 million a biennium was taken out of the state's coffers and is now going to stay back in Montanans' pockets. So I really think that was a big issue that we needed to pass, and for the state where we spend primarily income tax dollars, I think that was a really big issue. I'm going to disagree with Senator Flowers. I think one of the biggest letdowns this session was not getting partisan judges pushed through. In my opinion, I think a lot of the courts already are partisan. We know where they stand. We know who they supported in elections. We know that where their beliefs are, and I don't believe they are handing down impartial judgments on a lot of these cases. I think, as I'm going to steal a phrase from the president, I think when you walk into that Supreme Court building, 9 times out of 10, the cake is already baked. So that's where I guess my views are, especially on partisan judges. And I see the Chief Justice sitting in the back there. Anyway, with that, I'm trying to be a man of few words, so I'll turn it back over to our moderator here, and we'll get started with questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A lot of reference has been made already to property taxes. We had great conversation yesterday. about property taxes. And as you're all well aware, the business community is not altogether pleased with what came out of the last session. There was a lot of great conversation yesterday about capital investments and corporations looking to invest in capital improvements, pipelines, rail systems, utilities, and that possibly being a disincentive if our tax structure is out of whack with neighboring and adjoining states. So we'll start with President Regier. Let's delve a little deeper into this property tax issue. What are you hearing from your constituents back home? What do you think might materialize in this next session? Because clearly a lot of people don't think the issue was, quote, fixed.
Yeah, correct. And so just full disclosure, if you didn't know, I was against the property tax shift all the way through. We had some other options that I was behind, and hopefully those can be recycled back through this go-around. I don't think what happened last session is sustainable moving forward. We're going to see, I think, what maybe was intended by some of the yes votes to stop actually happen. And by that I mean Montanans being priced out of their own homes. Montanans that have worked hard, been successful in life, bought a nice property, but they're retired now, and all of a sudden their property taxes are going up $2,000 a month on top of everything else. And when you're retired and all of a sudden have to pay another $20,000, that's not going to work. So they're going to be selling their homes that are nice upper middle class homes. Who's going to buy them? Out-of-staters. I think it's going to be the exact opposite of what the legislature intended to do. And we can talk about the details of the property tax, but I think a lot of you know that already. So I'm going to go into what I've experienced here through the interim. A lot of people, especially I'm from the Flathead, half my district is on Flathead Lake, but even people off the lake that are middle-class Montanans that have been hurt by that. But this is one actually that came from Bozeman, and she said I could share this, Cynthia. Her taxes in 2022 were $9,680. In 2024, $15,926. Their current bill, $32,856. She sent a copy of her tax. How is she going to do that? They're retired. From $9,000 to $32,000 from 22 till now. Just a few quotes from her letter. For years, we relied on short-term rental income from small cabin property to help pay our mortgages, and we're losing that critical income. What troubles me most is the scale of inconsistency of state asset increases. A 60% jump. Not just the wealthy who are paying the price, it's middle-income families like mine who are being taxed as if we are affluent simply because of inflation and inconsistent state valuations. This approach does not reflect Montana's longstanding principles or what voters expect from a Republican-led legislature committed to fairness and fiscal responsibility. And the last one, we are asking only for the protection of basic property rights, a fair valuation, and a tax burden grounded in reality. I think she hit the nail on the head, and I hear this from a lot of different people. Yes, there are some people that felt some relief, but there's a handful of Montanans here that aren't very well, it could be not Montanans anymore because of this. And the reality, tax burden grounded in reality, that one kind of hit too. And the Taxpayer Association, this during the session, I talked with Bob Story quite a bit, and I had never seen this before, and it was a taxes per 100,000 of property. So whatever it is, your valuation of $100,000, and it breaks down all the classes of property tax that we have in Montana. Residential, under the new law, the 0.76 on 500 mils, you're at $380. That's your taxes on 100,000. I mean, pipelines, if you go to the biggest one, that's $6,000. $380. And I get it, pipelines have millions of dollars moving through every week. You don't have that in your house, so I get it, there's differences. But at some point, this scale is going to get so far out of whack. And we're going to see different changes. We can talk about what's coming here in 2026, too. I think there's going to be a whole nother group of people that now are going to be upset in 2026 that were happy this session. So they say that when you pass a bill and nobody's happy, you probably did something right. I disagree with that because if that's the case, they did a good job in the legislature this last time, because I think by the end of 2026, there's going to be nobody happy with this property tax shift. So that's my, I guess, take on what has happened since the session. So.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, Senator Flowers, what are you hearing from constituents in Bozeman and others that you're talking with, and what might you anticipate in 2027 as far as continued efforts to reform our property tax system?
Not surprisingly, I'm not hearing the same thing that the president's hearing. 80%, I've seen that letter, and there's a lot of details there that aren't reflected in the simple letter. But in any case, 80% of Montanans saw their property taxes go down. That is a win, in my opinion. And I think in order to think about property taxes and what we did in this session, you have to look back to 22-23. And in 22-23, there was a significant shift of tax burden from big business to residential property owners. And our tax system, as you probably know, is pretty much a zero-sum game. So if somebody else's taxes are going down, somebody else's taxes are going up. In this case, residential property owners saw a huge increase in their tax bills in 23, and that's when you heard the alarm being sounded by everyday folks saying, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay this 30, 40% increase, in some cases doubling, of our property tax? And so our intent going into this session was to rebalance that. And the shift that occurred in 22-23 was a function of the fact the increase in property tax that results from an increase in valuation when property values go up, that doesn't apply to large commercial in the same way, because we've made changes in the tax law, so it doesn't apply in the same way it applies to residential. So when you see a big jump in properties across the state, the burden of that is going to fall on residential property owners. And so we attempted in this last session to rebalance that a bit. And I'll just speak to one of those large business interests that will go unnamed. But their property taxes, for example, went down in between 22 and 23 by $31 million. And the following, well, as a result of this session, their property taxes went up by 23. So they're still actually money based on that. And so although I understand the alarm that was raised in at least a large business community about the change in the tax, to some degree, it's a rebalancing, and it's a rebalancing in our mind in terms of fairness. So is this law perfect? No. There's at least one thing that was certainly overlooked related to the multifamily housing being taxed at a higher rate that was intended, and that to some degree was a product of kind of the work at the end of the session, and that was unfortunately missed, and it can be easily fixed. So I expect that to be fixed in the next session. Beyond that, I think we're challenged by this balance, by the zero-sum game nature of the tax system. And so it's been criticized as the property tax solution that we supported as a tax shift, and it was. And it was also a tax shift in 22-23 without passing any legislation. So as we look ahead, I think we need to be very clear-eyed that if you attempt to fix this by reducing the tax on large business, for example, it will shift, and it will increase the taxes on residential landowners, or residential taxpayers. So that's kind of the overview from my perspective of what we did. I'm actually really proud of the work that we did in this session on property tax. It's kind of a no-win sort of problem for this state. And it's going in and out. So I think we're challenged in the next session to again face a no-win solution, but I'm sure there will be lots of debate on it, and that's how things are supposed to work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Mr. Speaker, your colleagues on the stage here both represent some of Montana's fastest growing, most prosperous, high-taxed areas of the state. You represent a rural agricultural constituency. Do you have a different outlook or perspective than was offered by your two Senate colleagues?
Absolutely, I do. While I agree with the Senate President that the work is far from over, and I don't believe that what we did was 100% perfect, but I believe it was a step, and it was a step that needed to be taken. We can take this debate all the way back to the 70s. And in the 70s, when we started killing off all of our natural resource development, that's when we started seeing the pinch. We started seeing the pinch that there was less and less natural resource development, less and less of them dollars being taken in, especially whether that's in western Montana with the timber industry, whether that's in Representative Perry's district with the coal industry, whether that's in my district with the oil and gas industry. When we stop developing our natural resources, them dollars are no longer there, and I think Montana, we have killed that golden goose dang near. I think it's hanging by a thread, but it's not, it's on life support. You look back 50 years, and property taxes was very minimal because we had that golden goose there that was providing the income needed for our local governments, for our cities, for our schools. And we, as the citizens of this state, didn't have to pay in near as much as we do now because we had that strong, vibrant natural resource development. Now, in my area, you fast forward to 2012, 2013, that's when we seen the hit on residential because we had an oil boom come to town, and all of a sudden a $50,000 house is now a $350,000 house. So we were ahead of Bozeman by a good 10 years seeing this. I had good friends. We were all just out of high school and just getting our adult lives started. Some of us were buying homes, and some of us were building homes. And I had a good friend who built a house. His bank note was $350,000, and that's what the house cost him to build. But the state said it was worth $650,000 because of the comps around him. And that's what he was tacked on. That was his assessment. And I think that's what we're overlooking here is the assessment part of it. And I think that's where the work needs to be done is on the state's assessment side. Now, saying that, I agree a little bit with Representative Flowers. We've seen that shift in my area in 2014 and a lot of western Montana. We've seen that in 2022, 2023. Well, when your property values go up more, that burden got put on residential, less of that burden got put on your other 3 or 4 different categories you have. And I think that was a shift back then. And I think all we did was shift it back in to try to restructure it. Is there things we could have done different? Absolutely. The multifamily units, I believe part of that's going to get fixed in the next phase of it in 2026. Is it perfect? No. Do I believe the other solutions that were out there that were attempted to get through were perfect? No. One big thing for me is I don't want to use somebody's income tax dollars that rents that doesn't own property to subsidize our local governments, to subsidize the schools that they don't even own property, but yet we're taking their income tax dollars and putting it into the property tax system. You know, and I think the big issue we're missing here too is, something that the president talked about here in his opening, Senate Bill 117, Representative Zolnikov's. I think that was a huge bill that passed. We see our local government's budgets just climbing and climbing and climbing. We see our school system's budgets climbing and climbing and climbing. We at the state don't spend property tax dollars. We allocate the assessments, and we're in charge of the assessments, and we're in charge of rates. It's up to our local governments, whether that's our school boards or our county commissioners, to set their local budgets and mill at the rates that they see fit. We're not the ones that are setting them mills in our local counties. And I think that that's where the burden really lies, and that's a problem that Montana, being a local control state, here up in Helena, we don't want to delve into that. That's not our job. And that's where property tax kind of has this weird, where the state's in charge of some of it, but yet the local governments are in charge of a lot of it too. And that's a system that we just sit here and point fingers back and forth at whose problem it really is. And so I think we did some good work. I think there's a lot more work that we can do. And I look forward to seeing some of the proposals that are brought next session, and seeing if we can further improve and fix some of these problems. But I still think that the real crux of the problem that we're seeing with the rise in property taxes is the lack of natural resource development, or the use of our natural resources in this state we have called the Treasure State.
Wow, thanks. I moved here in 1992, and I can relate that there were dozens of communities around Montana that had in their community the largest taxpayer being a sawmill. So I can relate exactly to what you're talking about, Mr. Speaker. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, if I could, just on the zero-sum game aspect of this, I don't quite buy into that. I know it was said throughout the session on that, and I'll give you one example of what we have going on still is hotel tax paid for by a lot of tourists that come. $45 million of that hotel tax is coming to the state general fund. Why? Tourists are putting pressure on your communities, on their water, on their roads, on the police. They're using the infrastructure, and who's paying for that? Homeowners. So if we want to balance something, let's just leave the tourist dollars back in the communities to help out property taxpayers, instead of the state taking it and letting guys like us spend it in the state general fund. So that is something that is so logical to me, of a dollar that is purposed somewhere that we're stealing as a state. And that can be a very big twist there, I think, for property taxes in the future. It's not a zero-sum game. They're all the same taxpayer.
Okay, well, let's shift gears a little bit to a related but different topic, and that being energy. The Chamber is very focused on energy development and meeting the future needs of Montana industry, business, and obviously residential properties. But there's a lot of debate in Montana, and the property tax issue is part of that debate. And how are we going to meet future energy demand for data centers and industry? Obviously, the coal industry has waned, and we're seeing a lot of pressure on our existing energy production system. So let's shift gears a little bit, and Senator Flowers, ask you to dwell a little bit further into the issue of your party's perspective on, where Montana's future energy is going to come from, and how it will be reliable and affordable for Montanans and for businesses.
Thank you, Kerry. One of the kind of fundamental goals that we think we should have in this state related to energy is we should create some type of energy authority for the state. And with that would come a comprehensive long-term plan on our energy future. That's really not, you might assume that, the PSC is doing that, or that's part of the Public Service Commission, that's part of their responsibility. It's really not. And so our energy development, our energy future is a little not random, but it's based on proposals for new wind energy, or different mechanisms to keep Colstrip alive, without any kind of picture or vision of where our long-term energy future is headed. So we think that's something that the legislature could take on in creating that authority. Obviously, there's a tremendous number of details related to that would have to be fleshed out. But we think fundamentally that would help guide a more rational and thoughtful energy future in the state. That said, obviously, we think there's a lot of opportunity related to renewable energy in addition to maintaining our existing base that we have now in coal and oil. And ultimately, what we're interested in is reliable energy that keeps rates down for consumers. And we think that's probably going to continue to be a combination of renewables, more development related to renewables, whether it's wind or some form of storage related to that is an important component. And again, we're expecting, certainly in the foreseeable future, non-renewables are going to be a big part of our energy future. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Speaker, you're up on the topic of energy and Montana's energy future.
Thank you. Thank you. As I stated in my previous statements on property taxes, I think that Montana's energy future is strong, but I think we need to quit kowtowing to the feds and their views of our so-called fossil fuels or our non-renewables. I don't believe that we are quite there yet with the renewable energy side to make it a sustainable future. I believe there is a place for it, but I do not believe it is the primary place for it. We have massive coal reserves, we have natural gas, we have all these other proven, reliable sources of energy that have been there and have been developed and have been becoming cleaner, and we need to continue to develop them and not necessarily bow down to the feds and a lot of their regulations. And I think we did that especially with some of our MEPA reform that we did, allowing it to be easier for us to develop them. I mean, in the last year, we've, it's been reported that down in the Bighorn country, there's one of the largest reserves of coal in the state of Montana, and I believe, in the nation even, that we have the natural resources, we have the ability to produce that clean, affordable, reliable energy here. And when you think about it, not all of it, but a good portion of the renewable energy that is produced in Montana, whether that's in eastern Montana or western Montana, does not stay in Montana. We're killing off our fossil fuels, whether that's oil and natural gas, because of federal regulation. We're putting up all these wind turbines, and that energy gets shipped somewhere else. I think we need to start taking care of Montanans and developing them natural resources, and so that way when it comes time to where we don't end up in a pinch like California or Oregon, I don't want to have a brownout when it's 30 below, or a blackout, or whatever they call it. That's not who we are. That's not who we want to be. And I think that to make it to where it's sustainable and reliable, we need to go with the reliables, and that is coal and natural gas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. President, bat cleanup, if you would, on the topic of energy.
Sure. Nuclear. I think energy is going to be big in the future. It could be right up there with water. House Bill 696 by Representative Gary Perry, which it's always dangerous when you're sitting on stage and the bill sponsor's staring at you, and you're going to talk about his bill. So Gary, if I get it wrong, just cut me off, all right? But it created the framework for approval of uranium conversion and enrichment facilities in Montana. I was just at a conference with Idaho National Labs doing small modular reactors. They gave some interesting stats. In the U.S. in 1950, there was 329 terawatts. By 2020, that's 4,178 terawatts, and they're estimated by 2050 to be 6,500 terawatts needed in the United States for energy. Nuclear reaction releases 1 million times more energy than a chemical reaction. I don't see how we get to where we need to get with AI that's coming. And it's not just about turning on the lights or keeping the heat on anymore. We're talking about China and the AI race and military. I mean, we even saw the eviction, I guess, if you want to call it, down in Venezuela, where we shut off the lights. Like it's turning into where AI is going to be the next battlefield, I think, for just security, and that trickles right down to energy and where do we get the energy. Data centers, in 2023, took up 4% of the energy grid. So that is just going to skyrocket in the future. I don't see how we get there, like I said, without nuclear. They're doing some amazing stuff with these small modules that they can daisy chain together and move around. It's incredible the safety that is going into those. So I think that's something that we as a state need to take a look at and see how do we get security, not just for lights and heat, but also for the AI that is coming and cybersecurity.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to shift gears just a little bit from our script because I'm watching a time clock here. And I'm going to ask to roll two topics together. A few years back, it would have been unheard of for the chamber to be talking about childcare, affordable housing. That was just not even on the radar. But now you ask business owners, business leaders around the state, some of their biggest challenges, and it's affordable housing for employees and it's childcare. So let's roll those two topics together, try and address it briefly. What do you see down the road as far as solutions that the legislature can be a part of? And Mr. Speaker, we'll let you kick that off.
Thank you. I guess on the affordable childcare and affordable housing front, I think that the way we get there is getting government regulation out of a lot of that field and a lot of that sector. I always, I guess, stand by the point that when you get government involved, especially in them two sectors, that the prices go up. We make it affordable for somebody but unattainable for other people. I guess I'm going to be real short and sweet that I don't think that the government should be involved in childcare or in affordable housing. I think that should be left up to the private sector.
Mr. President, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there was a few good bills that passed on childcare as well as housing costs. That was House Bill 337 by the Speaker that cut income taxes across the board. Senate Bill 117, Daniel Zolkoff, that's going to limit property taxes in the future. I think those are a couple bills that go directly to housing and childcare by leaving more money in Montanans' pockets, Montana businesses' pockets. I believe the expense sheet of life. I mean, what are we as the government going to, where are we going to stop if it's childcare? I mean, there's a lot of expenses on that life balance sheet that where is the government going to get involved versus government getting out of the way and letting people thrive?
Thank you. We're going to move into questions from the audience. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I jumped out of order. No, thank you. I appreciate you pointing that out. Senator Flowers, I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm glad somebody's looking out for me here. It's a lonely spot up here today.
I guess maybe.
Yeah, thank you. I mentioned the component of the Growth and Opportunity Trust that was focused on child care. That's a pretty kind of broadly worded component of that trust. It allows for a lot of flexibility to come up with creative solutions on that, and I think we're still working through that. So I think that has a lot of potential. The one bill that passed that was unfortunately vetoed by the governor was related to the Best Beginnings program, and that expanded the application of that program, which provide basically a subsidy, some assistance for lower income folks that need child care. And it also provided for employees of child care facilities to be covered under the Best Beginnings subsidy. I met with a number of providers for child care about 3 weeks ago, and they were incredibly disappointed that didn't pass, or that wasn't ultimately signed. That's a real benefit for these businesses who are trying to retain employees to provide child care, and one of the incentives was that program. And not being able to provide that is a real struggle for some of those businesses. So I'm sure this is going to remain an important topic as we go into this next session as well. Thanks.
Did you have any thoughts on housing in addition to other comments?
Well, I touched on that initially, and in a place like Bozeman, I have to say that the prices have stabilized, but it's still too high for most people. I have a lot of friends whose kids have a hard time locating in Bozeman and have to move either out of the community or out of state because they just can't afford to live there. The median price of a home in Bozeman is $800,000 plus, which is kind of stunning. And for a new young family trying to figure out how they're going to buy an $800,000 house, it's just impossible. So we've got a long ways to go there. I know the governor's had many conversations with him on this topic, and he likes to focus on market solutions, which I appreciate. And whenever we can find straight market solutions, we're all better off. But in this case, I think it's going to continue to take some creative thought on how to meet the housing needs in Montana. And we don't want to push, just like we don't want to push people out of their homes with property tax, we don't want to push people out of our communities. We don't want to have our kids have to move out of state because they can't afford to live here. That's just not right. So we've got a lot of work to do there. I think some of what we've done with the Growth and Opportunity Trust and those low interest loans will help. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Flowers. And again, my apologies for skipping over you. We're going to go ahead and take some questions from the audience. And Matt has the green microphone. Aren't these something? They're kind of like a clown nose.
Good morning. I'm still struggling with the speaker's point that 1970 was 50 years ago, so bear with me. Mary Rutherford with the Montana Community Foundation. I want to thank you for serving, and I also want to thank all of your fellow legislators who are here for making permanent and increasing the Montana Endowment Tax Credit, which every business that pays income tax in the state of Montana can take advantage of. That's been a huge boon for philanthropy in our state, and I just want to thank you for that.
Other questions? This podium has been bothering me the entire time because we've left out people over here on the left side of the room, Charles. So for future reference, let's get rid of this podium. Question over in the far corner.
The political discord, the intra-party political discord. For political nerds like me, the op-ed pages of the weekly papers across the state of Montana have been more interesting than the front pages. And in both parties, we're seeing this political discord. It seems like the temperature is higher than I've ever seen it in my career. And so I'm curious, how do we get through this right now, people filing to run and the primary season, and then get back together to work together in the Capitol next year?
Senator Flowers, I'm going to give you first crack at that since I slighted you a few moments ago.
Thank you. Good question, good point. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of discord in the political world right now in the state and beyond. And from my perspective, we actually had a lot of success in this last session as Democrats working across the aisle, albeit with one set of colleagues in the Senate. But it was truly bipartisan work where we didn't get all that we were hoping to get as Democrats, and certainly they as Republicans didn't get all they were supposed to or wanted to get by supporting each other. But it was a conversation that I thought was really healthy, and one of the reasons I thought it was so healthy is it was focused on what's good for Montanans, not what's good for Democrats, not what's good for Republicans, what's good for Montanans. And I think to the extent that all of us in the legislature can keep focused on how can we come together and deliver what we know Montanans want. And with that, we're not going to agree on everything, and that's fine. That's kind of the nature of the beast. But I think sometimes we lose sight of our fundamental job, which is to deliver for our voters. And we get caught up in ideology and or just political gamesmanship. And the more we can move away from that, I think the more effective we'll be as legislators, and I think the happier you'll be with the product that you see, and maybe you'll see less discord on the op-ed pages. Thanks.
Mr. President, you were in charge of herding cats last session. Your perspective.
Well, John, I'm glad we're keeping you entertained anyway. I think there is this maybe unspoken push that, hey, civility means stop debate. And I don't think that's our job. We're here to debate. Come in with your issues. Come in and argue them passionately. Argue them in the LTEs, on Facebook, whatever. But then go have a beer afterwards and go to the next issue then and be ready to go with the guy that just called you a whole bunch of names and be ready to go, hey, I agree with you on this issue. Let's go do that. And I remember in the House that happened back in 23 when I was there. It was like, hey, I'm gonna go hammer you in a press release, and then let's have a bourbon afterwards. And I'm like, great, go do it. Stand up, and that's the way it worked. And I think that's what I kind of opened this with. It shouldn't be about the personalities. It should be about the policy. But don't sacrifice that policy. And I think that's what it comes into. Let's be civil, and then they'll back off from the policy part. Let's go out and argue. Go out and argue your issue. But then afterwards, let's be open and ready to co-sponsor a bill with anybody on the next issue.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Iverson. It's not only herding cats, it's herding feral cats, and a lot of them have rabies.
There's a quote.
Yeah. Anyway, I agree with the president. I think that having healthy debate is what we're up here for. As leaders, I think that we need to take stock in every facet. I don't look at myself as the Speaker of the Republican Party. That's Majority Leader Fitzpatrick's job. He's the Majority Leader. I look at myself as the Speaker of the whole House. I can't be the Speaker of just the Republican Party. I'm tasked with getting up there and making sure that, my caucus is heard and the whole House is heard, and that my priorities and the priorities of the majority are what is done. I don't like to play games. Everything, I want it out on the table, and I want everybody's voice to be heard, whether they agree or disagree with me. And so I guess I look at it from the perspective of, as leadership, it is our job to sow that political discourse and make sure that the debate is vibrant. But at the end of the day, like the president said, I want to sit down and have a drink with you and see what your next topic is that you want to bring up, and maybe we can agree, and maybe it's going to be another knockout dragout, and I'm going to have to defend a position against you, but I don't ever want to get rid of the debate. And so I guess it's the political world we live in, the ebbs and flows of politics, and I guess it's part of the reason why I got into wanting to serve and into the position I'm in.
Thank you for those responses, and John, thank you for the question. I think that was top of mind for a lot of us. Whoa, check that out. That's leadership right there. That's taking charge. Thank you, Todd. Awesome. I had
to the rancher to figure out the simple solution.
Right.
Critical thinking skills right there.
With my clown nose in front of me, I didn't dare do that. Yeah, a colleague of mine, John, years ago, gave me some wise advice, and he said, we need to learn to disagree without being disagreeable. And we need to be tough on the issues, but easy on the people. And I think those are such succinct, accurate comments. And I think at the federal level, at the state level, we need to bring those levels of intensity and disagreements and disagreeable moments down. So thank you for that response, all of you.
Can I add one more thing into this. When I first got elected into office in 2021, my old man was sitting there and we were kind of talking about what I wanted to make of this. And one of the things he said to me that stuck with me throughout the whole deal is you may not respect the person's opinions that sit next to you, but you have to respect the office that they hold. And I think we all get elected by the same 11,500 people, and whether I agree or disagree with you, I still have to respect the office you hold and the opinions you bring in to that, and that your constituents voted for you and brought you into that position.
Excellent. I think we had a question back here. Melissa.
Yes, thank you. I'm Melissa Lewis, and dovetailing on this conversation, I'd like to look at 2027 and opportunities to collaborate to really impact the bottom line for businesses and also help constituents. I have two quick questions. Number one, is there any appetite in Montana to establish a business court following states like Texas, Delaware, and Wyoming? These business courts really have jurisdiction over commercial disputes, have specialized judges with expertise to handle complex business issues, and really to help with expedited resolution on the business side. First, I'd like to ask that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. We, as the president said, we kind of had legislation put in forth by Representative McGilvery, Senator McGilvery. And I believe the appetite is there. I believe it's kind of goes along the same lines of, not necessarily with partisan judges, but I think that the same people that supported the position that you're in, or you're wanting. And I believe it's good for Montana. It really alleviates a lot of the strain we see in some of the courts. They're overbooked, and I think having these specialized courts to deal with these issues is something that is needed and would be very beneficial, and it would create efficiencies that we haven't seen in resolving a lot of these disputes. So yes, I believe the appetite is strong.
Mr. President, what are your thoughts?
Ditto.
That'll save us some time. Senator Flowers.
I think the appetite's there. I'm just not sure whether we're ready to eat. So I think there'll be the discussion again. There's pros and cons to creating a special court for any purpose. It comes typically at a cost. We have to weigh that cost against whether it's going to provide enough benefit and enough efficiency to make it worthwhile.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question before we move into our final comments. Matt, there's a question right beside you.
Hi, my name's Sam Schmidt, and I own a physical therapy clinic of about 60 people. And we were beneficiaries of being involved with the chamber and getting some grant money for a very important child care program. And 70% of my workforce, those folks making revenue when they're in the business, this is what I sell, is their skill set to provide health care, are women. And they are not coming back because they can't find child care, nor does it allow them to, they're not even making what they can to with child care costs. And I am proud to say that bringing this program on for my business, I was able to recruit and bring back 3 different PTs from staying at home and help support my business. And those are skilled, highly professional workforce that we need in Missoula and across Montana. So healthcare and childcare, they're tied together. As a small business, I like to tell my business what I want to do. I don't want a lot of government, but healthcare is tied to government, and I have to do that. And it's just kind of a messy situation, but I do appreciate the childcare support because it allows my small business to compete with those hospitals that get facility fees and get higher reimbursement from government programs that my business doesn't. So
let's move into some responses. Mr. Speaker, you made your views on that pretty clear. So let's move over to Senator Flowers. What's your reply to the comment, which was more of a comment than question?
Well, I think that was a great illustration of what I've talked about earlier, that this whether it's childcare or healthcare, they're both business issues. And I don't think we've always looked at them that way. We've looked at them at times as more of a social welfare issue, but they are business issues, because if you don't have employees because they can't afford the child care to make it worthwhile to come to work rather than stay at home with their kids, then that's a challenge for you as a business. So I think we need to kind of broaden our scope and look for solutions, and I think there's lots of opportunities still for more creative work on that. Again, I think what we've done, setting aside some money in the Growth and Opportunity Trust for that purpose, allows for some creativity and other solutions. I would like to see some kind of mechanisms for more support for businesses kind of collaborating together to create their own child care facilities that service their business interests. And there may be an opportunity for whether it's this child care trust or something other than that to support that kind of effort as well.
Okay, Mr. President, do you have any further comments on the matter of child care?
Yeah, I'm not questioning the value of health care or child care or any other necessity, and barrier to entering the job market, but I do question the premise then of taking it from one person's pocket and pay for somebody else's. If you proliferate or extrapolate that out, it's not going to be a sustainable model. So back again to where, we're in the government, we're in the business, we take your money by force and then we turn around and appropriate it. That's the reality of what we do, and we got to be careful of what we're taking and where we're appropriating it. I do think there are some things that have been bipartisan. Like Senator Bogner had Senate Bill 142 that adjusts the ratio of daycare workers. House Bill 187 back in 2023, Alice Buckley, a Democrat, had child care as a residential use of property so that the mom down the street can just grab a couple kids from the neighborhood, and all of a sudden that's two more people that can go and be physical therapists. So did I say something off on that?
I think that'd be kidnapping.
Good. Well, we can have laws on that too. We can address that.
Mr. Speaker, you made your view pretty clear earlier, but do you have any clarifications? Or
I agree with Senate President on everything he said. I guess the last piece I would add into it is that from my view, when we get government involved in an industry, it makes it, more expensive, harder to obtain. We create regulations around things. I think things are working well. When a long time ago, I wasn't in the workforce back then, but my mom was a teacher, and during the summer she, had a daycare. There was no government regulation around saying, how many kids she could have. That was up to her, and she obviously took the responsibility on and knew what she could handle. I think that the more regulation, the more control we take on as government, whether that's in the healthcare arena or the child care arena, it just every regulation we put on makes it more expensive and harder to obtain for businesses and for people that want to go back into the workforce. And I think if we reel a lot of them back, you'll see a lot of that come back. With the licensure of daycares, and you can't write off an unlicensed daycare, but you can write off a licensed daycare. I think we need to have more opportunity for people to open up daycares and send their children to maybe the unlicensed one, because they don't want to go through all that work. So when that goes into vaccines and goes into a whole bunch of other realms that we don't need to discuss today.
Okay, that's probably a good idea. Todd and Charles asked me to make sure that when we circled back and finalized the discussion, that we talked a little bit about the Montana Public Service Commission. The Chamber supported a bill last session that would have shifted the composition of the PSC to have the governor appoint a couple members and have several elected. And the bill failed, but it generated a lot of great discussion, opened a lot of eyes to some of the dysfunction in terms of how the Public Service Commission operates. And I would start with President Regier. What are your thoughts on the legislature's role? What does the PSC need fixing, and if so, how can we fix it?
Northwestern right here at the front, yeah. Senator Zolikoff's bill, I think really did open some eyes, I guess, to a lot of legislators and really started the conversation. So I think there are a lot of these senators that are much more willing to take a look at options of what does the PSC look like in the future. I don't know if there's one that everybody's right behind now, but there's definitely opportunity for that conversation next session.
Senator Flowers, Public Service Commission.
Thank you. I think this is an area actually where we will find some bipartisan cooperation trying to find a better solution. As I understand it, the current interim energy committee is working on a bipartisan agreement that would come out, hopefully with unanimous support out of that committee, that would go to essentially an appointed set of commissioners, and they would come with the appropriate experience and credentials as opposed to the current system, which anybody can essentially file for that seat regardless of your background or experience. And we think that will lead to, and I would agree with the direction they're headed in that committee, to a more professional, well-grounded, thoughtful Public Service Commission. I think an important component of that, and I think they are working through this in the Interim Energy Committee, is to ensure that it has real bipartisan flavor in terms of the appointments. And so it would involve, for example, if it would get there, maybe 2/3 vote from the Senate approval, so it would require some bipartisan agreement on those appointments. So I think that's an important component. I don't care who's in power, whether it's Democrats or Republicans. I think we're trying to, the Public Service Commission especially, should be representing all citizens, should be representing ratepayers fairly. And those ratepayers are both Republicans and Democrats, and I think they need to be represented fairly on that commission.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Speaker, your final comments on the, you can see our clock.
I don't think I can do this in 12 seconds. I think that, well, you guys got to go back and realize that the Public Service Commission was created by the legislature. It's not a constitutionally elected office, so we do have the authority to do as we please with this thing that we created. I think that the biggest issue we see, especially coming from constituents, is that they want the voice that they have. And they don't want us to take that away. They don't want it to be somebody that is, you know, I'm just appointed by the governor, because the governor represents all 1.1 million people. I represent my 11,000. So it's really tough to take that voice away from the people, away from that district, and make these districts so much bigger. While saying that, I also agree that there should probably be some restructuring of the PSC to maybe make it work as efficiently as it should, and maybe, you know, having some requirements on there that you have to have some sort of industry knowledge, and instead of making it more of a political gamesmanship position. So.
Thank you. Isn't it clear why these gentlemen were elected by their respective caucuses to lead their House and Senate roles? And we're sorry that the House did not have a Democrat leader. Mary Cafarrell just let us know about 5 o'clock this morning that she was feeling ill. But what a great discussion, what a great crowd. Sorry we don't have more time for Q&A, but let's give our panelists and our legislative leaders a big round of applause for your role in serving Montana. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We really do appreciate the dialogue. Before we take a quick break, I just wanted to take a minute and continue to thank some of our sponsors. Our bronze sponsors are Green Diamond Resource Company, Rainmaker Technology, and UBS. And some of our copper sponsors, the Billings Clinic, Inbridge, Holland and Hart, Montana Bankers Association, Montana Grain Growers Association, Montana Stock Growers Association, Talon Montana, Treasure State Strategies, and Southwest Power Pole. So please take a few minutes, refresh your coffees, and do a little bit of networking, and we'll see you back at 9:30.